Hello, Cats and Kittens, Oliver Jose, Yaroshka, and welcome back to the Crisis Corner on Manga Mondays. I'm behind on my impressions of various chapters. I might go back and backfill some of the chapters, but probably not. So I'm just going to move forward from One Piece, chapter 1062, Adventures in the Island of Science, excuse me. Getting to the crew. So we were on the Egghead Island. Another impression that I get here is a lot of chapters seem geared towards Pacific Straw Hats. It looked like this is Frankie's turn. Because this Egghead Island, Vegapunk, he spent 2 years studying Vegapunk science to develop his own. Something's going to come out of this in terms of Frankie going forward, I guess. And another impression that I get is that this arc, whatever this arc turns out to be, it's not going to be a battle-heavy arc. I think this is going to probably progress lore. It's probably going to progress power-ups. We'll get into that later, but I don't think that there's a villain setup that's going to present a significant threat physically to the crew. That's just an impression that I get. The biggest surprise in this arc has to be Vegapunk, the 6 paths of Vegapunk, which is weird. I didn't know. I mean, Oda's, he's going in an interesting direction with Vegapunk, who we all assume was one dude, probably a dude with just one person. And now we come up with a person who split himself into 6 or created 6 versions of himself for some reason. And I'm wondering if this is similar to, not necessarily pain. I mean, because are these living beings? Are these androids? Are these what? How did he create these 6 expansions of himself, and to what end? If I go to Full Metal Alchemist, like the villain there is the father basically, who divested himself of his 7 deadly sins and created different beings to represent those. I mean, he created what do they call him again? Jeez, it's been a second. He homunculus or whatever they were. They were basically his envy, his greed, his whatever, but just put into different personas, and they ran around and did his bidding or whatever. Is that what we're talking about? Or are we talking about creating androids or whatever? I'm curious as to the process. I'm kind of curious about what exactly are these different pieces of Vegapunk. I mean, from the outset, we see that there's this Lilith who is supposed to be evil, or presents herself as being Lilith the evil. She doesn't seem evil to me, maybe opportunistic, but to me, an evil person would be going in to do. She wants to rob the Straw Hats. It comes across the Straw Hats, assuming that they have treasure and needing funding for her, scientific exploration or whatever. I'm gonna rob these dudes and take off with their money. An evil person would rob them and probably kill them. But it seems like, from her standpoint, she says, so hand over your valuables. After that, I'm done with you. So it seemed like maybe she was going to let them go after she got their money. That's mean. I don't know if I say that's evil. Anyway, the crew, you get to different reactions. Frankie, of course, is, ecstatic to meet Vegapunk, and, not even questioning why this is a woman, a young woman at that. He and Usopp, are starstruck. but Usopp more so by the creation than the creator. And Nami and Brooke, they're just crying basically. Okay, I'm not really cool with that, but whatever. I mean, it's a Yonko crew, so whatever. I mean, I don't need nobody crying no more, but whatever. Robin and Zoro are holding it down, and they get their height, you know what I'm saying, which is cool. So Lilith is apparently is in communication with Shaka, another mode or whatever of Vegapunk. And one's evil and one's a do-gooder. Now, it seems like the do-gooder has some amount of authority over Lilith to a degree that he or it, I don't even know if I guess it's a he, I don't know. I'm not going to say commands Lilith, but basically tells her to bring the crew to him at the conclusion of this opening portion of the chapter. But that, the crew is surrounded by these monstrous beasts, sea beasts, which are either robots or whatever. And it's a cool exchange because, you get the impression that from the last chapter, we see that the crew is split. We got Zoro, Robin, Frankie, Sanji, Brooke, and Nami, one set, and the other set is Luffy, Jinbei, and Chopper. So the crew that's dealing with Lilith is pretty set power-wise. I mean, you got Zoro, Robin, and Frankie on the top tier. I guess, Brooke is mid-tier, and then you got the two cowardly types. But they're not in bad shape. And I like the fact that Robin and Zoro have this thing figured out. They know that by whatever means, they've devised, as Shaka explains, the mighty always determine the first foe they should strike down. So there's a pecking order. Strong people know who you have to attack first. And he brings out the fact that Zoro is calm because he knows that he can slaughter Lilith in an instant without no diff. And Robin's figured out the same thing. So that's cool. The interesting thing is Lilith believes that Frankie, the other Straw Hat's reactions were a diversion so that she wouldn't notice that Robin and Zoro had figured out to kill her first. My question is that intentional, or is it just a function of how the crew acts? You know what I mean? Do they intentionally set up this diversion so as to get the jump on Lilith, or is that just how they act and it happens to go that way? To me, Nami's tears are real. She's scared. Usopp's thing is being scared. I'm not even bothering with that anymore. I mean, I made my peace with Usopp. He always comes through in the end, but he's got that coward thing up front, so it's what it is. That's fine. But were Frankie, Sanji, Sanji saw a beautiful girl, so he acts like he acts. Like I'm saying, to me, that's not necessarily a plan. Like, you guys distract them while we figure out whatever. That's just how they act. So I can't even say that's a tactic, so to speak. Anyway, they have the drop on her. At least Robin and Zoro have the drop on Lilith. And my man Zoro, MVP, just tells her flat out, look, Vegapunk, if you Vegapunk, whatever, we got some demands and you better play nice. You better do as we say. What are those demands? Consensus seems to be that he wants them to treat the people back on Wano who have that smile laughing thing where they keep laughing or giggling. I can't remember what it is. They laugh. And they don't have their emotions, their proper emotions, so they can't express sad emotions. Maybe he wants them to go back, or they, because it says we have some demands and you're going to listen. So is this a consensus of the group? We want you to do this. Or is that a personal request from Zoro? It could go either way. But Vegapunk's cool with it anyway because he says, I have an interest in that crew. That's also interesting because Vegapunk, let me see, Vegapunk knows, and Kumar type. We find that out because we know Bonney had visited Egghead Island as a child, which means she was welcome. Matter of fact, she and Kuma were welcome because that's Vegapunk's island. So they're tight. We know that Kuma is tight. I mean, obviously, he was in the Revolutionary Army with Dragon, and he looked out for the Straw Hats back when they were fighting in Killer Bark. He twice he's actually saved their lives. Okay, and that was out of deference to Dragon. So it's a little circle here. You know what I mean? Has does Vegapunk's interest in that crew stem from his knowledge, or does he know Dragon, and therefore, or from knowing Kuma, is he part of the Revolutionary Army? And if so, does he know Dragon? Does he have an interest in that crew because he has an interest in Luffy? Because Luffy is Dragon's son, the same as Kuma has an interest in saving the Straw Hats because of his debt to our friendship with Dragon. There seems to be some kind of circle there going on. That'll bear itself out. In terms of the other side of the story, where Luffy, Bonney, Jinbei, and Chopper are running around exploring the island. It's interesting that Bonney kind of falls in with that. It's, what you call them? Oda split the teams up well because those four interact together very well, especially when it comes to eating. You know, especially with Luffy, Bonney and Luffy, gorging themselves. I guess you could throw Chopper in there too on food. That plays well together. And Jinbei is fitting in well. This is some of the first real interaction that we see of Jinbei with the Straw Hats on an adventure, as opposed to just being thrown into the middle of that battle on Wano, where things were a little bit more straight. It was like a survival, straight survival type situation. Now we get to see how does Jinbei interact with the crew just on an adventure. And he's fitting in well. He has that uncle type thing locked down pretty well. That side of the crew run into Vegapunk 6 Atlas, which is about violence. And we see bursts of violence when Luffy strikes her thinking that she's a hologram. She strikes him back quickly. Not doing, I mean, it's a hit. I'm not saying that he was like in too much danger, but he took the hit because he didn't actually think that she was real, therefore he struck her. So she strikes him back, and then she also shows a violent temper when she's thinking about the lack of funding that she and the other Vegapunks have towards various inventions like the food dispenser, or the replicator, I call it basically, the replicator, or the weather control device. All these things cost money and need technicians, but they're short on technicians and short on money. And she said, it makes me so mad that she hits one of the constructs, or light constructs as it is. It shows that burst of anger. She said violence. So She is Vegapunk 6 violence. All right. That's interesting. And also, going back to the idea that this arc is going to introduce power ups, Atlas has these, what does she call it? Light pressure gloves that allow her to hit light constructs. One can only think that that's going to be something that the Straw Hats can use. Which Straw Hat? I don't know. Maybe any of them that face somebody like Kizaru, or maybe one of a pacifista that, or anybody that deals with light in some type of way. That could be a power. Usopp maybe could get, I don't know. It probably had to be a fighter. Luffy, if he has to fight Kizaru, but he could hit him with hockey. Somebody that doesn't have hockey that needs to fight a creature with light powers, however that works. But I can see that being a power up of some sort. So again, Vegapunk Atlas. Bonney is not aware. It seems like Bonney is not aware of the 6 paths of Vegapunk, because when Atlas presents herself as Vegapunk, she doesn't believe it. So she's thinking of the real Vegapunk that she knows. All right, so that's interesting. That's again, this is a good setup chapter. So there's 3 setups. We had the beginning, we had the middle part with Luffy and his little side of the crew dealing with Atlas, as opposed to Lilith at the beginning. Then we get to CP0. They are on their way to Egghead Island. And the interaction is interesting because Kaku, which I'm not, when I go back to when they were CP9, because you put it like this, here you get the impression that Kaku is either the, maybe not the leader, but the, I don't know, he implements the missions or the plans or whatever, because Lucy looks completely disinterested. Like he's just here to do a job, whereas Kaku is, giving the mission briefing. I can't remember if it worked like that when they were CP9. Stussy wasn't part of them when they were CP9, so she's a new entry into the whole thing. So they have a Kuma Seraphim on board with them, and their orders are to go to Egghead Island and eliminate all the Vegapunks. After they explain what the Vegapunks are, basically the Shaka, Lilith, Edison, Pythagoras, Atlas, and York. All of those different forms of Vegapunk have their, again, it reminds me of the father from Full Metal Alchemist. Except for rather than 7 deadly sins, you just got 7 different types of, I guess, genius. Good, evil, thinker, wisdom, violence, greed. Interesting. So CP0 is to go there, eliminate all the Vegapunks, but not destroy anything on the island, because they need the stuff on the island is deemed to be valuable. Another thing about Lucci is that it seems that he's being set up to have maybe some kind of dissension within the CP0 ranks, and that he's, what does he say? He said it doesn't. He's wondering if them wanting to kill Vegapunk has something to do with what happened to the Lucia Kingdom the other day, and the other 2 are like, hey, don't be getting any ideas. Stussy says that for a man as keenly as perceptive as you are, you shouldn't be looking for answers. Basically just do your job. That doesn't even sound like Lucci. Lucci sounds like he just do his job. He'd even do it with zest. But it seems like his mindset's a little different than previously when they're CP0. And again, Kaku seems like the level-headed one and kind of like the leader to me. So this is an interesting setup. I don't think the CP0 presents a legitimate threat to the Straw Hats. I think any one of the top 4 Straw Hat fighters could beat any one of CP0. The Kuma Seraphim, I'm not sure. And I'm also curious as to if the Kuma, nah, I'm not even going to go there. We'll see what happens. So it's a little setup here. I'm interested to see how this is going to work, because Oda is supposed to be speeding things up to the conclusion, but he's adding a lot of intricacies here that could lengthen things out. I'm wondering, is he going to be able to satisfy all of the little underpinnings that he's putting into this story? Also, in terms of the worst generation, we're getting, it seems like this story is going to be centered around Bonney, and she is probably the second to the last member of the worst generation to get any proper shine or introduction. We've been through all of them, with the exception of Bonney and Rouge, in my opinion, because I don't know anything about him. I don't know if he's even going to get featured. He might get killed off screen at this point. I don't even know if he's still alive, to be honest with you. But she's one of the last of the worst generation to be focused on. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. So it's a good introduction to the adventures on the island, Egghead Island. And I'm looking forward to the next chapter. So that's all I have for now. Look forward to your comments and see you next time. Stay loose.